The wind howled across the rocky surface of Caravos Prime, carrying dust and ash from the distant volcanic mountains. Amy Brooks pulled her environmental suit tighter around her body as she walked carefully through the ancient ruins. The buildings around her were strange and beautiful, made from a material that looked like melted glass frozen in time. She had been studying this dead planet for 3 weeks now, trying to understand what happened to the creatures who once lived here. Amy was a scientist who studied alien life forms. She worked for Earth's space exploration program, traveling to distant worlds and documenting everything she found. This planet was special, though. The creatures who lived here, called Kareth by the few records that existed, had simply vanished 200 years ago. No bodies, no signs of war or disease, just empty cities and silence. She walked into a large cave system at the base of a crystal mountain. Her helmet light cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in strange symbols and images. The pictures showed dragon-like creatures with wings and scales, breathing fire, and building great structures. Amy had seen these images before in other ruins, but today something felt different. The air inside the cave was warmer than it should be. Kevin Ross, her friend and fellow researcher, spoke through her helmet radio. "Amy, are you finding anything interesting down there? The ship wants us back in 2 hours." "Just old drawings so far," Amy replied, moving deeper into the cave. "But there's something weird about this place. It's warm." She walked past collapsed pillars and broken pottery until she reached a circular chamber. In the center of the room sat a cluster of large eggs, each one the size of a basketball. Amy's heart raced. These were Kareth eggs, but they looked ancient, their shells cracked and dark with age. She approached slowly, scanning them with her handheld device. All dead, probably for centuries. But then she noticed one egg at the edge of the cluster. It was different from the others. While the rest were dull and gray, this one shimmered with colors that seemed to shift between silver and gold. Amy reached out and touched it gently. The shell was warm, almost hot against her gloved hand. Her scanner beeped urgently. There was life inside this egg, a heartbeat faint but steady. "That's impossible," Amy whispered. 200 years, and somehow this egg survived when all the others died. She stood there for a long moment, unsure what to do. Protocol said she should call her captain and report this immediately. The egg would be taken to a research facility, studied, and probably opened in a controlled environment. But something about that felt wrong. This was the last child of an entire species alone in the dark for 2 centuries waiting. The egg moved slightly, rocking back and forth. A thin crack appeared along its surface, spreading like a lightning bolt. Amy stepped back, watching in amazement as the crack grew wider. A small sound came from inside, a soft chirping noise that reminded her of a baby bird. The shell broke apart and a tiny creature tumbled out onto the cave floor. It was no bigger than a house cat, with scales that reflected her helmet light in 100 different colors. The creature had 4 legs, a long tail, and small wings folded against its back. Its eyes were large and bright, the color of liquid gold. It looked up at Amy and made that chirping sound again, this time more desperate, more afraid. Amy knelt down slowly. The creature was shaking, weak from being trapped in that egg for so long. It tried to walk toward her but stumbled, its legs too wobbly to support its weight. Without thinking, Amy scooped the tiny dragonling into her arms. It was warm, warmer than any living thing she had ever touched. The creature pressed against her chest and stopped shaking. It made a soft rumbling sound, almost like a purr. "Hello, little one," Amy said softly. "You've been alone for a very long time, haven't you?" The dragonling looked up at her with those golden eyes, and Amy felt something shift inside her chest. This was not just an interesting scientific discovery. This was a baby, frightened and alone, needing help. She thought about the research facilities back on Earth, the cold laboratories and testing rooms. She thought about this creature spending its life in a cage, being studied and analyzed and never knowing warmth or kindness. Amy made a decision that would change everything. She wrapped the dragonling carefully in her jacket and tucked it inside her suit. The creature settled against her, its body heat spreading through her clothing. Amy walked quickly back through the cave system, her mind racing. She needed to get back to the shuttle without anyone seeing what she carried. Kevin was waiting outside the cave when she emerged. He smiled when he saw her. "Find anything good?" "Just more ruins," Amy lied, feeling the dragonling shift slightly against her stomach. "Nothing we haven't seen before." They walked back to the shuttle together, Kevin talking about the reports they needed to file and the next planet on their survey schedule. Amy barely heard him. All she could think about was the living warmth pressed against her body and the choice she had just made. Once aboard the shuttle, Amy went straight to her private quarters. She sealed the door and carefully removed the dragonling from her suit. The creature looked even smaller here under the bright lights. Its scales had lost some of their shine and it was breathing in short, quick gasps. Amy realized it was starving. She searched through her emergency supplies and found some protein paste meant for humans. She squeezed a small amount onto her finger and offered it to the dragonling. The creature sniffed it carefully, then licked it off with a tiny forked tongue. It made a happy chirping sound and opened its mouth for more. Amy fed the dragonling slowly, watching as it gained strength with each bite. After eating, the creature curled up in her lap and closed its eyes. Within seconds it was asleep, its chest rising and falling with tiny breaths. "What have I done?" Amy whispered to herself, gently stroking the dragonling's scales. They felt like warm metal under her fingers, smooth and hard, but somehow alive. She knew she should report this. She knew keeping an alien creature hidden was against every regulation and rule. But when she looked down at the sleeping dragonling so small and helpless, she knew she could not hand it over to be studied like a specimen. This was a person, the last of its kind, deserving of more than a life in a laboratory. Amy decided to call the creature Ember, after the warm glow of its scales and the fire she imagined it might one day breathe. She set up a small nest using blankets and pillows in the corner of her quarters. When she placed Ember in the nest, the dragonling's eyes opened briefly. It looked at Amy with what seemed like gratitude before falling back asleep. The shuttle docked with the main research vessel an hour later. Amy smuggled Ember aboard inside a sealed equipment case, praying no one would ask to inspect it. Her heart pounded as she walked through the corridors, certain that everyone could somehow hear the soft breathing coming from inside the case. She made it to her quarters on the ship without being stopped. Once inside, she released Ember from the case. The dragonling immediately ran to her, climbing up her leg and perching on her shoulder. It rubbed its head against her cheek, making that purring sound again. Kevin knocked on her door that evening. Amy hid Ember in the bathroom before letting him in. He looked tired from the day's work but smiled when he saw her. "Captain wants to see all the data from today," he said. "Did you upload your scans from that cave system?" "Not yet," Amy replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'll do it tonight." Kevin nodded but did not leave. He looked at her carefully, his expression concerned. "Are you okay? You've been acting strange since we came back from the surface." From the bathroom came a soft chirp. Kevin's eyes widened. Amy closed her eyes, knowing her secret was already discovered. "There was no point in lying to her friend, Kevin," she said quietly. "I need to show you something, and I need you to promise not to tell anyone." She opened the bathroom door and Ember walked out, looking up at Kevin with curious golden eyes. Kevin stared at the dragonling in shock, his mouth opening and closing without making a sound. "Amy," he finally said. "What did you do?" "I saved her," Amy replied simply, picking up Ember and holding the dragonling close. "And I'm going to keep her safe no matter what it takes." Kevin sat on the edge of Amy's bed, staring at the dragonling with wide eyes. Ember sat in Amy's lap, watching the man with curious attention. The creature tilted her head to one side, studying Kevin as if trying to decide whether he was safe. "This is crazy," Kevin said for the third time. "Amy, this is completely crazy. You know what they'll do if they find out you're hiding an alien creature on the ship?" "I know," Amy replied quietly, "but I couldn't leave her there. She's just a baby, Kevin, the last of her entire species. What kind of person would I be if I handed her over to be locked in a cage and studied?" Kevin ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he always made when he was stressed. He looked at Ember again. The dragonling yawned, showing tiny sharp teeth and a red glow deep in her throat. Kevin jumped slightly and Ember made a soft trilling sound that almost sounded like laughter. She's intelligent, Amy said. More than I expected. Watch this. She pointed at a cup on her desk and said clearly, Ember, can you bring me that cup? The dragonling looked where Amy pointed, then hopped off her lap and walked across the room. She picked up the cup carefully in her mouth and brought it back, placing it in Amy's outstretched hand. Amy scratched Ember behind her small horns and the dragonling purred with pleasure. That's impossible, Kevin breathed. She's only a few hours old. How can she understand language already? I don't know, Amy admitted. But she does. She understands everything I say, and I think she's trying to communicate back. Watch her eyes when I talk. She's listening, really listening. Kevin watched as Amy spoke to Ember about her day. The dragonling's golden eyes followed Amy's face intently, and occasionally she would chirp or trill as if trying to respond. It was clear that something deep was happening between them, a connection that went beyond simple animal training. Okay, Kevin said finally. Okay, I won't tell anyone. But Amy, you can't keep this secret forever. She's going to grow. What happens when she's too big to hide? I don't know, Amy said honestly, but I'll figure something out. Will you help me? Kevin looked at his friend, then at the small dragonling who was now grooming her scales with her tiny tongue. He sighed deeply. Yes, I must be as crazy as you are, but yes, I'll help. Over the next 3 weeks, Amy's life became a careful balance of work and secret caretaking. During the day, she performed her duties as a xenobiologist, attending meetings and filing reports. At night, she returned to her quarters to care for Ember, who was growing at an alarming rate. The dragonling was now the size of a medium dog, her wings beginning to unfold and her scales growing harder and more brilliant. Ember had learned to control the fire in her throat, practicing by heating Amy's meals or warming the room on cold nights. But more impressive was her intelligence. Ember understood hundreds of words now and had started to communicate through a series of chirps, trills, and body movements that Amy was learning to read. Amy spent every free moment researching the Karath civilization. She accessed ancient databases recovered from the planet's ruins, studying everything she could find about these mysterious creatures. What she discovered changed everything. The Karath were not animals. They were a sentient species with complex societies, art, philosophy, and technology. They built cities and created beautiful things. They wrote poetry and music. And most importantly, their young bonded with a single caretaker for life, forming connections as deep and meaningful as any human parent and child relationship. Amy sat in her quarters late one night, Ember asleep with her head in Amy's lap. She read through a translated Karath text that described the bonding process. When a Karath hatched, they would imprint on the first being who showed them love and care. That bond was sacred, unbreakable, lasting until death. The caretaker was not an owner but a chosen parent, responsible for teaching, protecting, and loving the young Karath as they grew. Tears ran down Amy's face as she read. She had not just rescued an animal. She had become a mother to someone's child, the child of an entire lost civilization. The weight of that responsibility was enormous, but so was the love she felt growing in her heart. I promise you, Amy whispered to sleeping Ember. I promise I'll protect you. I'll teach you about your people. You won't be alone. Ember's eyes opened slightly. The dragonling looked up at Amy and made a soft sound that might have been understanding, might have been love. Then she closed her eyes again and slept, safe and warm. But keeping secrets on a small research vessel was becoming increasingly difficult. Strange things started happening that Amy could not explain away. Energy readings spiked in her quarters at odd times. The temperature in her section of the ship was always warmer than it should be. And worst of all, Ember accidentally started a small fire when she sneezed while sleeping, sending flames into the ventilation system. The ship's alarms went off at 3 in the morning. Amy woke to flashing lights and the sound of running feet in the corridors. Ember was awake too, frightened by the noise, small flames flickering around her nostrils. It's okay, Amy said quickly, hugging the dragonling close. Just stay quiet. Please stay quiet. She heard voices outside her door. Someone was checking every room, looking for the source of the fire. Amy's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. There was no way to hide Ember now. The dragonling was too big and the room smelled of smoke and sulfur. The door chimed. Lieutenant Brooks, open up. We need to check your quarters. Amy looked at Ember. The dragonling looked back at her with frightened golden eyes. In that moment, Amy realized that everything was about to change. She could not hide Ember anymore. The secret was over. She opened the door. Captain Helen Price stood in the hallway with 2 security officers. The captain was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked past Amy into the quarters and her eyes widened when she saw Ember cowering in the corner. "What?" the captain said slowly. "Is that?" "Her name is Ember," Amy said, her voice shaking. "She's a Karath. I found her on Karavo's Prime. She's the last of her species." Captain Price walked into the room slowly. Ember pressed herself against the wall, her body trembling. The captain studied the dragonling for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "How long have you had this creature aboard my ship?" she asked quietly. 3 weeks, Amy admitted. "I'm sorry, Captain. I know I broke regulations." But she was all alone. She needed help. "She's dangerous," one of the security officers said, pointing at the scorch marks on the walls. "She started that fire. She could have damaged the ship." "It was an accident," Amy said quickly. "She was sleeping. She didn't mean to." Captain Price held up her hand for silence. She approached Ember carefully. Kneeling down to look at the dragonling at eye level, Ember watched her with wide, frightened eyes. "Can she understand me?" the captain asked. "Yes," Amy said. "She's very intelligent. She understands everything we say." The captain looked directly at Ember. "Are you going to hurt anyone on this ship?" Ember shook her head slowly, a very human gesture that made everyone in the room gasp. Then the dragonling chirped softly and moved closer to Amy, pressing against her legs. Captain Price stood up. "Lieutenant Brooks, you are confined to quarters until I decide what to do about this situation. The creature stays here as well. We'll discuss this in the morning." After the captain and security officers left, Amy sat on the floor with Ember. The dragonling climbed into her lap, though she was really too big for it now. Amy held her tightly, whispering comforting words. Kevin arrived an hour later. He had been given permission to check on Amy. He sat beside them on the floor, looking worried. "The whole ship is talking about it," he said. "Everyone wants to know about the dragon in your room." "What's going to happen?" Amy asked. "I don't know," Kevin replied honestly. "But Captain Price is fair. She'll think about what's best." But Amy knew that what was best for regulations and what was best for Ember might be 2 very different things. She held the dragonling closer and tried not to think about what tomorrow would bring. Ember looked up at Amy's face and made a questioning sound. Amy managed a smile. "It's going to be okay," she said, hoping it was true. "I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise." The dragonling settled her head against Amy's chest right over her heart, and despite everything, despite all the fear and uncertainty, Amy felt that bond between them growing stronger. This was her child now, her responsibility and her joy. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Morning came too quickly. Amy had barely slept, spending the night with Ember curled beside her on the bed. The dragonling seemed to sense Amy's worry because she stayed close, occasionally making soft, comforting sounds. When the summons came from Captain Price, Amy's stomach twisted with fear. "Stay here," Amy told Ember. "I'll be back soon." Ember chirped anxiously and tried to follow, but Amy gently pushed her back. The dragonling sat by the door, her golden eyes sad and confused. It broke Amy's heart to leave her, but she had no choice. The captain's office was cold and formal. Helen Price sat behind her desk, her face serious. Several other officers were there too, including the ship's doctor and chief engineer. Kevin stood in the corner looking uncomfortable. "Lieutenant Brooks," the captain began, "you've placed me in a very difficult position. You smuggled an unknown alien lifeform onto this vessel, endangering everyone aboard. You violated protocol, ignored regulations, and lied to your commanding officer. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Amy stood straight, meeting the captain's eyes. "I did what I thought was right. Ember is not a threat. She's a child, the last survivor of her species. She deserves better than to be locked in a cage and studied like a specimen." "That's not your decision to make," the captain replied. "We have procedures for discovering alien life. Those procedures exist for good reasons." The ship's doctor, an older man named Gregory Hunt, spoke up. "I've reviewed the scans we took last night. The creature is producing significant heat and energy. She could be dangerous as she continues to grow." "She has a name," Amy said firmly. "Her name is Ember, and she's not dangerous. She's scared and confused. She needs guidance and care, not imprisonment." Captain Price leaned back in her chair. I've sent a report to Earth Command about this situation. I received their response an hour ago. She pulled up a message on her screen. They want the creature transferred to a military research facility immediately. A transport ship will meet us at the next station in 4 days. Amy felt like she had been punched in the stomach. No, Captain, please. You can't let them take her. It's not my decision, Lieutenant. These orders come from the highest levels of command. Then the highest levels are wrong. Amy's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. Captain, I've spent weeks researching the Karath. They were a sentient species, as intelligent as humans. Ember is not an animal or a thing to be studied. She's a person. She has thoughts and feelings and the capacity to love. Sending her to a military facility would be like sending a human child to be experimented on. That's quite a claim, the chief engineer said skeptically. How can you prove this creature is truly sentient? Bring her here, Amy said. Let her show you. Captain Price considered this for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. Have the creature brought to my office. Kevin left to get Ember. While they waited, Amy's mind raced. She had to make them understand. Ember's entire future, maybe her life, depended on what happened in the next few minutes. When the door opened, Ember rushed in, going straight to Amy and pressing against her legs. The dragonling was shaking, her scales dimmed with fear. Amy knelt and hugged her. It's okay, Amy whispered. I'm here. You're safe. Captain Price stood and walked around her desk. She approached Ember slowly, her hands visible and empty. Hello, Ember, I'm Captain Price. This is my ship. Do you understand what I'm saying? Ember looked at the captain, then nodded her head clearly. Can you show me you understand numbers? If I hold up 3 fingers, can you chirp 3 times? The captain held up 3 fingers. Ember looked at them carefully, then chirped 3 distinct times. The captain tried again with 4 fingers, then 2. Each time, Ember responded correctly. The officers in the room exchanged glances. That could be trained behavior, Dr. Hunt said, though he sounded less certain now. Amy had an idea. Ember, can you tell the captain how you feel right now? The dragonling looked up at Amy, then back at the captain. She made a long, mournful sound that clearly conveyed sadness and fear. Then she pressed closer to Amy and made a different sound, one full of warmth and trust. The meaning was clear even without words. She was afraid of these strangers but felt safe with Amy. She's bonded with you, Captain Price observed. That much is obvious. It's more than that, Amy said. In Karath culture, when a dragonling hatches, they bond with their caretaker for life. It's like a parent and child. That bond is sacred to them. Separating us wouldn't just be cruel. It would be devastating for her. She wouldn't understand why her mother abandoned her. Her mother? Dr. Hunt raised his eyebrows. Lieutenant, you're not this creature's mother. You're a human being who found an alien animal. She's not an animal. Amy's voice shook with emotion. And maybe I'm not her biological mother, but I am the only mother she has. She trusts me. She needs me. And I need her. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. I love her like she's my own child. Ember looked up at Amy when she heard the word love. The dragonling made a soft, gentle sound and rubbed her head against Amy's hand. In that moment, the bond between them was visible to everyone in the room. Captain Price was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Even if I wanted to help you, I can't ignore direct orders from Earth Command. The transport will arrive in 4 days. I have no choice. There's always a choice, Amy said quietly. That evening, Kevin came to Amy's quarters. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder before stepping inside. Ember was curled up in her corner nest, but she raised her head when Kevin entered. I heard something, Kevin said quietly, about the research facility where they're taking Ember. What about it? It's not just a research facility, Amy. It's a weapons development center. They want to study Ember's fire abilities, her intelligence, to see if they can create some kind of bioweapon or use the Karath genetics for military purposes. Amy felt cold all over. They want to turn her into a weapon. Kevin nodded. I don't think they'll treat her well. From what I heard, they see her as valuable military technology, not as a living being. Amy looked at Ember, who was watching them with those intelligent golden eyes. The dragonling could sense something was wrong. She stood and walked over to Amy, pressing her warm body against Amy's legs. I can't let that happen, Amy said. I won't. What are you going to do? I'm going to leave, Amy said, the decision forming even as she spoke the words. I'm going to take Ember and find somewhere safe, somewhere Earth Command can't reach us. Kevin stared at her. Amy, that's desertion. They'll court-martial you. You'll never be able to come back. I know. Amy picked up Ember, holding the dragonling close. Ember purred and wrapped her tail around Amy's waist. But what kind of person would I be if I let them take her? What kind of mother would I be? The outer colonies, Kevin said thoughtfully. New Haven, maybe. It's a frontier settlement. They don't follow Earth's laws too closely. You could disappear there. Will you help me? Kevin looked at his friend for a long moment. Then he smiled sadly. I must be completely insane, but yes. I'll help you. They spent the next 2 days planning. Kevin had access to the shuttle bay schedules and could create a window for Amy to escape. He gathered supplies, food, and fuel cells while Amy prepared for the journey. The hardest part was acting normal, pretending everything was fine while knowing she was about to throw away her entire career in life. On the 3rd day, Amy received another visitor. Captain Price came to her quarters alone. She looked at Ember, who was now even larger, her wings fully developed and her scales gleaming like polished metal. She's beautiful, the captain said quietly. I've been reading the Karath texts you uploaded to the database. You're right. They were a sentient species. What we're planning to do to her is wrong. Then help me, Amy pleaded. Don't let them take her. Captain Price shook her head. I can't openly defy orders. But I can be slow in responding to certain situations. I can miss things that happen under my command. Do you understand what I'm saying? Amy understood. The captain was giving her a chance to escape. Thank you, Amy whispered. I never saw you, Captain Price said, turning to leave. And I hope you find what you're looking for wherever you go. That night, Amy and Ember made their way to the shuttle bay. Kevin met them there with a loaded shuttle ready to launch. He hugged Amy tightly. Be safe, he said, and take care of her. I will. Thank you, Kevin, for everything. Amy and Ember climbed into the shuttle. As the engines powered up and they pulled away from the ship, Amy looked back one last time at the life she was leaving behind. Then she looked at Ember, who sat beside her in the co-pilot seat, her golden eyes bright with trust and love. It's just you and me now, Amy said softly. But we'll be okay. We'll find a home, I promise. Ember chirped in agreement and settled her head on Amy's lap as they flew off into the endless stars, fugitives together, family forever. The shuttle flew through the darkness of space, its small engines humming steadily. Amy sat at the controls, her hands gripping the steering mechanism tightly. Ember was curled up in the seat beside her, watching the stars pass by through the viewport. The dragonling seemed fascinated by the endless expanse of space, her golden eyes reflecting the distant lights of faraway suns. They had been traveling for 2 days now, heading toward the outer edge of human-controlled space. New Haven was still 3 days away, and Amy was starting to worry about their fuel supply. The shuttle was designed for short trips between ships, not long-distance travel. She had pushed the engines harder than they were meant to go, trying to put as much distance as possible between them and Earth Command. On the 3rd day, the fuel warning light began to flash. Amy checked her instruments and felt her stomach drop. They had enough fuel to reach New Haven, but barely. There was no room for errors or detours, and if they encountered any problems, they would be stranded in empty space. We're going to make it, Amy said, more to reassure herself than Ember. Just 3 more days. Ember chirped softly and moved closer, pressing her warm body against Amy's side. The dragonling had grown even more in the past few days. She was now almost as large as Amy. Her wings folded carefully to fit in the small shuttle. Her scales had become harder and more brilliant, shimmering with colors that seemed to change depending on her mood. When she was happy, they glowed gold and silver. When she was worried, they dimmed to bronze and gray. Right now, Ember's scales were showing concern. The dragonling could sense Amy's worry, and it made her anxious too. Amy stroked Ember's head gently, running her fingers along the ridge of small horns that crowned her skull. It's okay, Amy said softly. Everything will be fine. But she was wrong. The alarm started blaring on the 4th day. Amy jerked awake from an uneasy sleep to see a large ship appear on her sensors. It was moving fast, coming up behind them. Amy's heart sank when she saw the identification code. Military vessel Earth Command. They had been found. No, 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 Amy whispered, her fingers flying over the controls. She tried to increase speed, but the shuttle was already at maximum capacity. The military ship was much faster and much more powerful. There was no way to outrun it. A voice crackled through the communication system. Unidentified shuttle. This is Commander Paul Jenkins of the Earth Command Vessel Sentinel. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. You are in violation of multiple regulations and are ordered to surrender immediately. Amy didn't respond. She looked at Ember, who was now fully alert, her body tense and ready. The Dragonling's eyes glowed brighter than usual and small wisps of smoke curled from her nostrils. Shuttle, this is your final warning. Cut your engines or we will disable them by force. Amy made a split-second decision. Hold on, Ember. She yanked the controls hard to the right, diving toward a nearby asteroid field. The shuttle shook and rattled as she pushed it beyond its limits. The military ship followed, its weapon systems powering up. A warning shot flashed past the shuttle, close enough to make the whole vessel shake. They're going to shoot us down, Amy said, her voice tight with fear. She dove deeper into the asteroid field, weaving between the spinning rocks. The shuttle's hull scraped against one asteroid, sending showers of sparks through the cabin. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Ember stood up, balancing carefully in the swaying shuttle. She looked at Amy and something passed between them. A feeling, an understanding. Ember knew what she needed to do. No, Amy said, realizing what the Dragonling was planning. Ember, no. It's too dangerous, but Ember had already made up her mind. She moved to the back of the shuttle where the small airlock was located. Amy tried to grab her, but Ember was too fast. The Dragonling opened the inner airlock door and stepped inside. Ember, please, Amy cried. You can't survive out there. Ember turned and looked at Amy one last time. Her golden eyes were calm and determined. Then she opened the outer airlock door and launched herself into space. Amy screamed and spun the shuttle around, desperately searching for Ember. What she saw made her gasp in amazement. Ember was flying through the vacuum of space, her wings spread wide. But she wasn't struggling or dying. Instead, a shimmering field of energy surrounded her body, protecting her from the deadly environment. The Dragonling was somehow generating her own atmosphere, her own shield against the cold and airlessness of space. Ember flew straight toward the military ship. Amy watched in awe as the Dragonling's throat began to glow red, then orange, then brilliant white. Ember opened her mouth and released a stream of superheated plasma that shot across the distance like a lance of pure fire. The beam struck the military ship's weapons array, melting the metal and disabling the guns in seconds. The military ship tried to maneuver away, but Ember was faster. She flew around the vessel in complicated patterns, her wings beating in the airless void through some mechanism Amy didn't understand. The Dragonling released another blast of plasma, this time hitting the ship's engine ports. The military vessel shuddered and began to drift, its power systems temporarily offline. Ember flew back to the shuttle and Amy quickly opened the airlock. The Dragonling came inside, the energy field around her dissipating as the door sealed. Ember shook herself like a wet dog, then chirped happily as if she had just done something fun rather than impossible. How did you do that? Amy whispered, pulling Ember into a tight hug. How are you even alive right now? Ember just purred and rubbed her head against Amy's shoulder. Amy realized that there was still so much she didn't know about the Kareth, about what they could do and what they were capable of. Ember was full of surprises. The communication system crackled to life again. Commander Jenkins sounded shaken. What was that thing? What kind of weapon are you carrying? She's not a weapon, Amy said firmly. She's a living being protecting someone she loves. And we're leaving now. Don't follow us. Amy fired up the shuttle's engines and accelerated away from the disabled military ship. She half expected them to repair their systems and continue the pursuit, but nothing happened. Perhaps Commander Jenkins had realized that some things were more important than following orders. Or perhaps he was simply too shocked by what he had witnessed to react. They flew in silence for several hours. Amy kept checking the sensors, but no other ships appeared. Finally, as exhaustion overtook her fear, she allowed herself to relax slightly. You saved us, Amy said to Ember, who was back in her seat. You were amazing, and terrifying, and amazing. Ember made a pleased sound and closed her eyes. She was tired from using so much energy. Amy could see the Dragonling's scales were dimmer than usual, and her breathing was slower. She needed rest. On the 6th day, they finally saw New Haven appear on their sensors. It was a small settlement built into a series of massive canyons on a rocky planet. The structures were simple and practical, nothing like the gleaming stations closer to Earth. This was the frontier, where people came to escape their pasts and build new futures. Amy sent out a general communication signal. "This is Shuttle requesting permission to land. We're seeking asylum." After a long pause, a woman's voice responded. "This is Mayor Claire Bennett of New Haven. What kind of asylum are you seeking, Shuttle?" "The kind where Earth Command can't reach us," Amy said honestly. "I have someone with me who needs protection." "Someone special?" Another pause. "Land in Bay 7. But come unarmed and be prepared to explain yourself." Amy guided the shuttle down through the thin atmosphere, passing over deep canyons and rocky outcroppings. The settlement appeared gradually, buildings carved into the canyon walls themselves connected by bridges and walkways. It looked rough and wild, but also somehow welcoming. They landed in a small bay carved into the rock. As Amy powered down the engines, she looked at Ember. The Dragonling was awake now, watching the new world through the viewport with curious eyes. "This is it," Amy said. "Our new home." "Are you ready?" Ember chirped once, a sound full of hope and trust. They opened the shuttle door together and stepped out into the dusty air of New Haven. A group of people stood waiting, watching them with cautious interest. At the front stood a tall woman with sun-weathered skin and sharp, intelligent eyes. This was clearly Mayor Bennett. The mayor's eyes widened when Ember emerged from the shuttle. The Dragonling stretched her wings, displaying their full, magnificent span. Whispers ran through the crowd of onlookers. "I'll be damned," Mayor Bennett said softly. "Is that a Karath?" "You know about them?" Amy asked in surprise. "I studied xenobiology before I came out here to the edge of nowhere. The Karath were legendary. Everyone thought they were extinct." The mayor approached slowly, her hands visible and non-threatening. "May I?" Amy nodded. The mayor reached out and gently touched Ember's scales. The Dragonling allowed it, watching the mayor with careful attention. "She's beautiful," Mayor Bennett said, "and you're running from Earth Command because of her." "Yes," Amy admitted. "They want to take her, study her, use her as a weapon. I couldn't let that happen." The mayor nodded slowly, seeming to make a decision. "Come with me. We need to talk about what happens next." Mayor Claire Bennett led Amy and Ember through the winding streets of New Haven. The settlement was more impressive up close than it had appeared from the air. Buildings were carved directly into the canyon walls, their windows looking out over deep gorges and distant mountains. People stopped to stare as they passed, watching Ember with expressions of wonder and fear. They arrived at the mayor's office, a simple room with a desk and several chairs. Mayor Bennett gestured for Amy to sit while Ember settled on the floor, her tail curled around her feet. The Dragonling was tired from their journey but remained alert, watching everything with those intelligent golden eyes. "Tell me your story," the mayor said. All of it, so Amy talked. She explained finding Ember on Caravos Prime, hiding her on the ship, the bond that had formed between them. She talked about the orders from Earth Command and the decision to run. She told the mayor about the confrontation with the military ship and Ember's incredible abilities. Through it all, the mayor listened carefully, asking occasional questions but mostly just absorbing the information. When Amy finished, Mayor Bennett leaned back in her chair. "You realize that Earth Command will come looking for you eventually. We're outside their direct control here, but they can still send ships. They can still make trouble." "I know," Amy said quietly. "But I had nowhere else to go. Ember needs a place where she can be safe, where she can grow up without fear. I thought maybe here on the frontier we could have that." "You love her," the mayor observed. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Amy said simply. "She's my daughter. Not by blood, but by choice, by the bond we share. I would do anything to protect her." Mayor Bennett looked at Ember, who was watching the conversation intently. "Can she understand what we're saying?" "Every word," Amy confirmed. The mayor addressed Ember directly. "Do you understand that staying here might bring trouble to our settlement? Earth Command might come looking for you." Ember looked at Amy, then back at the mayor. She stood up and walked over to Mayor Bennett, placing her large head gently on the mayor's knee. It was a gesture of trust and apology, a promise to cause no harm. The mayor smiled and scratched Ember's horns. "Well," she said, "I came out here to escape Earth's rules and regulations. Seems hypocritical to turn you away because Earth says I should." She stood up. "You can stay. Both of you. But Amy, you'll need to work. Everyone in New Haven earns their keep. I'll do anything, Amy said, relief flooding through her. I'm a trained xenobiologist. I can teach, do research, whatever you need. We have a school that needs a science teacher, the mayor said, and having a real alien as a teaching assistant would certainly make the lessons more interesting. Over the following months, Amy and Ember built a life in New Haven. Amy taught science to the settlement's children, who were fascinated by Ember and peppered Amy with endless questions about the Karath civilization. Ember became something of a mascot for the settlement, helping where she could and charming almost everyone she met. The Dragonling continued to grow. She was now the size of a horse with powerful muscles beneath her gleaming scales. Her wings were magnificent when fully extended, spanning nearly 20 feet. She could fly through the canyons with incredible grace, and the children loved watching her perform aerial displays. But Ember was more than just impressive to look at. She used her fire to help the settlement's metalworkers, heating their forges with precise blasts of controlled flame. She helped with construction, using her strength to move heavy materials that would have taken multiple people to shift. And when a child got lost in the canyon system during a dust storm, Ember found them within minutes, carrying them home safely on her back. Amy watched Ember with pride and joy. The frightened hatchling she had found in that cave was gone, replaced by a confident, capable being who knew her own worth. But Ember never forgot who had been there from the beginning. Every night, no matter how busy her day had been, Ember would return to the small home Amy had built on the canyon's edge. She would curl up beside Amy's bed, her warm presence a constant comfort. One evening, as Amy sat on her porch watching the twin moons rise over the canyon, Mayor Bennett came to visit. She sat down beside Amy, handing her a cup of hot tea. I thought you should know, the mayor said. Earth Command sent a ship 2 weeks ago. They wanted to search the settlement for you. Amy's heart sank. What happened? I told them to leave, showed them our settlement charter, reminded them that New Haven is self-governing and we don't have to honor their warrants. They weren't happy, but they left. The mayor smiled. Your friend Kevin sent a message too. He was court-martialed for helping you escape, but apparently, public opinion back on Earth has shifted. People heard about the woman who gave up everything to save an orphaned alien. You've become something of a folk hero. I'm not a hero, Amy said. I just did what anyone should have done. That's exactly why people admire you, the mayor replied. Most people say they would do the right thing. You actually did it. Ember emerged from the house, yawning widely and showing her impressive teeth. She settled beside Amy, resting her large head on Amy's lap. Amy stroked the Dragonling's scales absently. There's more news, Mayor Bennett continued. Earth Command has offered you a deal. They want you to come back and establish something called the Interspecies Relations Program. You would work with newly discovered alien species, ensuring they're treated with respect and dignity. They're even offering Ember full legal recognition as a sentient being with rights. Amy's hand stilled on Ember's head. They want us to come back? On your terms. No experiments, no military involvement. You would have complete authority over how alien contact situations are handled, and Kevin has been pardoned. He's waiting to join your team if you accept. Amy looked at Ember. The Dragonling was watching her with those golden eyes, and Amy felt the question in her mind as clearly as if Ember had spoken aloud. What do you want to do? I need to think about it, Amy told the mayor. After Mayor Bennett left, Amy and Ember sat together in the growing darkness. The stars came out one by one, filling the sky with brilliant light. Amy thought about Earth, about the career she had lost and the life she had left behind. She thought about Kevin, who had sacrificed so much to help her. She thought about all the other alien species out there, waiting to be discovered, hoping to be treated with kindness rather than fear. What do you think? Amy asked Ember. Should we go back? Ember was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up and spread her wings wide. The Dragonling launched herself into the air, flying up through the canyon toward the stars. Amy watched her soar, her scales reflecting the moonlight like a second constellation. After several minutes, Ember returned. She landed gracefully beside Amy and made a sound that Amy had learned meant agreement, acceptance. The Dragonling understood. They could make a difference. They could help ensure that no other species would face extinction alone, that no other orphaned child would wait in the darkness without hope of love. Okay, Amy said softly. We'll go back, but not because Earth Command wants us to. We'll go back because it's right. 3 months later, Amy stood in a large facility on a space station orbiting Earth. The Interspecies Relations Center was brand new, built specifically for her program. The walls were decorated with images from a dozen worlds, and the staff included scientists, diplomats, and educators from across human space. Kevin was there, smiling as he showed Amy around. He had been one of the first to volunteer for her team. Captain Helen Price had also transferred, choosing to support Amy's work rather than continue with traditional military service. And in a special section of the facility, designed to accommodate beings of all sizes and types, Ember had her own space. It was large and comfortable, with high ceilings and wide windows showing the curve of Earth below. But Ember spent most of her time in Amy's office, curled up in the corner while Amy worked. On their first official day, Amy gave a speech to the assembled staff. Ember stood beside her, magnificent and proud. Amy talked about respect, about seeing intelligence in all its forms, about treating every new species as potential friends rather than subjects to be studied. She talked about the bond between different kinds of minds and hearts, about family that crossed the boundaries of biology and evolution. "We are here," Amy said, "to make sure that no being ever feels alone in the universe. We are here to build bridges instead of cages, to offer friendship instead of fear. We are here because one small dragonling waited in the darkness for 200 years. And when she finally hatched, someone was there to show her love." Amy reached out and placed her hand on Ember's scaled neck. The dragonling rumbled with contentment, and Amy felt that familiar warmth, that bond that had connected them from the very beginning. "We are here," Amy continued, "because family is not defined by what we are, but by who we choose to love and protect. And that choice, that willingness to sacrifice for another being, is what makes us truly human." The staff applauded. Ember spread her wings slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement and pride. Amy looked at her daughter, this magnificent creature who had taught her so much about courage and love and what it meant to truly care for another soul. Later that day, Amy received a transmission. It was from a survey team,